In some foreign-owned companies, recruitment requirements are very high. However, once you get in, you can enjoy high salaries and benefits. Some people use connections or give gifts to secure this worry-free job, but I had nothing to offer except sacrificing my youth and dignity. My name is Marcia. After graduating from a prestigious university, I became an intern at a large corporation. Through multiple interviews and written tests, the day I started was supposed to be the beginning of my dream come true, but it turned out to be the start of a nightmare. Here, I needed to complete 1 year of internship and another year of comprehensive assessment before becoming an official employee, which meant securing that worry-free position. From day one at work, I made up my mind that I would do whatever it takes to keep this job. But things were easier said than done. After starting work, the pressure on me was immense. As an employee in media promotion department, I had more tasks than senior employees who spent their days drinking tea or chatting online. Although doing these tasks wasn't difficult for me per se, constantly worried about making mistakes which left me feeling exhausted all the time. The tense working atmosphere made me feel like walking on thin ice every day until Quincy came into my life. Only then did things start looking up slightly. Quincy is in charge of publicity, public opinion, media, advertising, and other related work. He is considered the top boss of our department. One day, while shooting a promotional short video with my colleagues, Quincy happened to pass by the small conference room. I was facing the door and saw Quincy stop in his tracks with an amazed look in his eyes. Being a former class flower, department flower, and school flower, I have encountered countless men's admiring looks before and have become accustomed to it. However, I never thought that those guys from before could threaten my future like Quincy. Quincy walked into the small conference room and stood shoulder to shoulder with our department head while watching our short video shoot for a while. Then he smiled and gave some suggestions before leaving. Before parting ways, Quincy shook hands with us clerks, including me. When shaking hands with me specifically, though, I felt him deliberately pinch my hand slightly. As he said meaningfully, "Marcia, you need to work harder." This kind of joke has been repeated in front of me since adolescence, so it didn't bother me much anymore, but after Quincy came around, for some reason, my working environment immediately improved significantly. The number of times old employees asked me to make tea or take out trash decreased significantly. Previously, our department head was always very strict towards me, but now she also shows some smiles occasionally. After about a week passed by, suddenly one day our department head told me that she wanted me to go on a business trip together with Quincy outside town. My mood became somewhat uneasy at this news. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. It's not complicated work. Our department head handed over her camera bag containing her DSLR camera. "You just need to go with Quincy and take some photos." Then she said to me again, "You must work hard. This is a request from Quincy himself. You have to perform well." Quincy specifically requested for me to accompany him on the business trip. I felt like I knew something. The next day, I waited at the intersection near my apartment at the agreed time. After a moment, a car arrived, and surprisingly, it was Quincy himself who was driving. There wasn't anyone else in the car except us two. My mood became even more nervous after being alone with my boss outside of work. The car drove for about 3 hours until we reached a project site over 200 kilometers away from our headquarters. Quincy inspected the construction site while walking around with his hands behind his back. All of the leaders and bosses of various sizes followed along, nodding their heads obsequiously, as if they were a group of sycophantic dogs. When Quincy smiled, they also smiled. When he frowned, they trembled in fear. Meanwhile, I took many pictures of Quincy using my camera. After finishing up inspections at the site, one of the project leaders invited us to dine at a nearby 5-star hotel. After 3 rounds of drinking alcohol during dinner, Quincy held up his glass and smilingly said, "Marcia, come on. Don't drink juice anymore. It's been tough going all this way, so let me toast you." Immediately, one leader passed over their own glass towards me, but feeling hesitant after seeing how strong smelling it was, I politely declined, which caused Quincy's expression to suddenly turn cold as he appeared very unhappy afterwards throughout dinner, not speaking much or paying attention to me anymore. I felt extremely uneasy because offending someone like him could affect my future prospects within this company, but little did I know that refusing an alcoholic drink offered by your superior publicly is already considered deserving death by 1,000 cuts, especially when it's your superior who publicly offers you the drink. Not giving face is simply an unforgivable sin. On the way back, I apologized to Quincy twice, saying that I really couldn't drink and how sorry I was. But Quincy didn't respond much, just gave a faint smile and said, "Oh." That was the only thing he said to me after the banquet, one word. I became even more worried in my heart. Sure enough, things quickly took a turn for the worse when I returned to headquarters. At first, lower-level managers scolded me frequently. Later on, someone inexplicably reported me for using the office phone to call my parents during work hours. And then a qualification document went missing, something that could be either minor or major, depending on how you looked at it. On one hand, it was just a copy with invalid watermarks along its edges. Losing it wouldn't cause any big problems. But on the other hand, this reflected poorly on my job performance and directly affected my chances of being hired full-time. However, this matter wasn't publicized widely. My department head called me into her office specifically to discuss what had happened with the document and emphasize how serious it was. Now Quincy is very angry. She sighed helplessly before continuing. From what I can tell by his tone of voice, if you don't handle this well, then you'll probably be fired before your internship is up. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that such a small issue would lead to me being fired from my job so soon. Desperately trying to find some solution, I asked, "Is there no way we can fix this?" My department head let out another sigh before saying, "Of course there's a way." Tonight Goal apologized to Quincy. With those words, she handed me an address printed out neatly with precise directions leading straight towards an upscale residential complex located off Shun Y Road, complete with gate codes included. Just as I was about to leave, my department head stopped me and looked at me with a complicated expression. In her eyes, I saw regret, pity, empathy, and even a hint of shock and fright. After a moment, she spoke slowly. "When you go apologize tonight, wear something nice. As a woman, it's inevitable that we'll run into these kinds of troubles. Besides, you're not married yet, nor do you have a boyfriend, so even if things don't go well, it won't cause any big problems." At this point, I didn't need to be told anything else. Even an idiot like myself could understand what she meant by those words. Looking at the expression on my department head's face made me realize that this dignified and elegant woman was probably just another toy in their hands, someone they could manipulate as they please. Blushing furiously, I nodded my head before leaving the office feeling uneasy. I had no desire to work anymore. So I took the afternoon off and returned to my apartment where I stared blankly at my wardrobe for some time. Having just graduated from university and living away from home meant that there were only 7 or 8 pieces of clothing inside, none of which were particularly pretty except for one set of Dynasty style worth over $300. It was definitely the most expensive and beautiful outfit in my closet though, sitting alone in my room for a while longer. I eventually began combing out my hair while applying makeup and adorning myself with flowers before changing into ancient dress. After spending an hour and a half getting ready, I looked at myself in the mirror like some sort of fairy maiden who had stepped out from within an ancient painting, full of ethereal beauty. But tonight, even if I truly were such a celestial being, then alas, it seemed unlikely that anyone would be able to escape unscathed from Quincy's clutches. With a soft sigh, I stood up and left the apartment. It was already 7 o'clock at night, and I didn't feel like eating. I took a taxi directly to the residential area. Along the way, whether it was the taxi driver or the security guard at the entrance of the community, they all stared at me with a dazed expression. If it were usual, I would have been quite happy about it in my heart. But thinking about that humiliation that might happen today, this luxurious dress on me made me even more uncomfortable. When I arrived at the unit address, I hesitated for a moment and gently knocked on the door. The door opened and Quincy's eyes were full of amazement as he looked at my ethereal appearance. This old man reached out his hand and touched my face.
You are really beautiful.
My little Marcia. His fat belly and sparse hair made him look like a pile of fat wearing only shorts. His face was covered in layers of fat with his eyes squinted into slits shining with greed. Looking at his ugly appearance, I instinctively turned my head away from his hand. Quincy immediately became angry. He snorted heavily, then turned around to sit coldly on the sofa while looking at me. I gently closed the door and walked to sit beside him with lowered. It's saying sincerely, Quincy, sorry for earlier. It was childish of me not to understand your position as an adult. Quincy spat out. You're so grown up, but still acting like a child. Besides, is that how you apologize? I quickly bowed 90 degrees. I'm truly sorry. Is just saying sorry enough? Quincy said unhappily. Tout how to show respect. I hesitated for a moment before reluctantly kneeling down on one knee, apologizing while whispering, sorry, repeatedly. Quincy bent over, staring down at me, smiling, but his expression and eyes were twisted with extreme ferocity. We are an internationally renowned enterprise. The salary for a regular employee is at least $30,000 per year. Do you think that just because you have a higher education, you can easily enter our company? Do you think having a high education makes you superior? Don't forget that even though I only have a high school education, I can still make this graduate beg for mercy in bed. My tears fell one by one. The silk dress was quickly soaked with tear stains. This old man walked over and squatted beside me while grabbing my chest through my clothes. You're arrogant and conceited. You think being beautiful means everything will go smoothly for you. Let me tell you, all of you pretty girls are born to be played with by men. As he spoke, Quincy hugged me on the sofa, then reached out to undo my gorgeous dress. The clothing was quite complicated to wear as it had no buttons or zippers. After trying twice but failing to undo it properly, the old man tore apart my dress directly, causing me to cry out in pain. As I listened to my weak crying, Quincy became even more excited. He quickly tore apart my expensive hanfu and exposed my snow-white skin. I studied art and also practiced dance. At the age of 13, I underwent a full-body hair removal surgery for the convenience of performing. This type of surgery not only includes armpit hair, lip hair, and leg hair, but also includes pubic hair. Undergoing depilation surgery before puberty can make pores very small and make the skin appear particularly delicate and smooth. Quincy was ecstatic as he embraced me and eagerly kissed my neck and collarbone. I felt nauseous, to the point of vomiting, especially when this old man kissed me. His cigarette and alcohol-aced body odor made it hard for me to breathe. Tears streamed down my face. My first kiss was given to such a dirty, greasy old man like him. Quincy hugged me towards the bedroom while I felt extremely nervous with tightly clenched fists ready to resist or escape at any moment. However, Quincy whispered in my ear, serve me obediently. Let me have sex with you once. Then I'll take care of making you permanent, he said ominously. Once is enough. You're not married yet. What are you afraid of? Thinking about hundreds of thousands in annual salary made me hesitate instantly. My willpower that had been resisting disappeared in an instant. With a gentle push from Quincy, I fell powerless onto the bed as he pounced on me like a hungry wolf. That night lasted until 1 o'clock in the morning before he finally stopped tormenting me. During that time, I cried, begging him for mercy, asking him to use some contraceptive measures. But he couldn't. He bothered with it. Afterwards, this old man proudly lay on his phone without lifting his head, saying, you should leave tonight. If someone sees you leaving in the morning, it won't be good. As I put on my skirt pitifully, I asked Quincy, what about making me permanent? Quincy casually replied, your attitude is progressive, but whether you can become permanent depends on your future performance. My heart sank as I knew this old man wasn't done with me yet. Sure enough, after that night, Quincy still wouldn't let me go. It was still the same address and residential area. Every few days or so, I had to go there to serve him. Seeing my increasingly painful expression, Quincy gave me some money to appease me. He bought me a new phone and some high-end clothes along with a diamond pendant white gold necklace. He also deposited $12,000 into my account. For Quincy, this amount of money was nothing. For me, though, accepting this money didn't mean much either. My biggest hope was to stay in this company and obtain coveted foreign enterprise employee status. Especially since I had already sacrificed my innocence, the desire for success became even stronger. If given the chance, though, I wanted that old bastard Quincy to stop bothering me. Finally, my chances come. At the end of every year, there are various inspections. This year, it's even led by a big shot from the headquarters. It is said that this boss is also one of the executive directors of the board. Compared to him, Quincy, who acts like a tyrant in front of others, looks as humble as a son. Quincy's chubby face is full of flattering smiles and his waist is hunched over carefully. With every word he says, I stand at the elevator entrance with our department head and several female colleagues. As soon as the boss from headquarters arrives, we applaud to welcome him. I take a deep breath and walk out with a sweet smile. General Manager, let me show you around our work environment here. The big shot from headquarters is a middle-aged man in his 50s. He nods with a smile and walks into the elevator with his hands behind his back. I chat and laugh beside General Manager while exuding elegance, beauty, and intelligence, all sorts of radiance shining upon me instantly. In the mirror inside the elevator, I notice Quincy looking at me doubtfully yet timidly. I secretly sneer in my heart, but ignore him completely. Walking alongside General Manager, I introduce him to various aspects about our unit. As part of Publicity Department, we usually have contact with different departments throughout entire buildings so we can obtain some relevant information. After careful preparation, I answer General Manager's questions fluently, which seems more impressive than Quincy's business ability. That big shot from headquarters appreciates me very much, while Quincy becomes increasingly nervous. Quincy knows that if I am so eager to perform well, then there must be something wrong. So Quincy cautiously suggests, General Manager, it's getting late now. Why don't we go for dinner? I've booked us into nearby 5-star hotel. The leader responds sternly. The board has repeatedly emphasized not to be extravagant and wasteful. Cancel the hotel's private room and meal expenses. The funds spent will be borne by the person responsible. I'll have lunch in the cafeteria on the first floor. Quincy's face turns ashen, his forehead sweating profusely. Looking at Quincy's embarrassed appearance, I couldn't be happier. I took the General Manager to the cafeteria downstairs for a meal. He carried his food tray with a friendly smile and chatted with the staff who were queuing up to buy their meals. He was extremely approachable. The General Manager stayed in our building for a day, and before leaving, he specially praised me and shook my hand goodbye. As for what happens next, I leave it up to fate. At 7 p.m. that evening, while resting in my apartment, I received another call from Quincy asking me to go over to his place. It seemed like he had been holding back all day and wanted to take it out on me at night. But I don't have time. I lazily replied, I have to accompany the General Manager at the hotel at 8:30 p.m. tonight, so I'm afraid there won't be enough time for me to come over. The General Manager of our head office was staying at the hotel tonight. Quincy knew about this, but others didn't know yet. Quincy thought that I didn't know, but actually, I did. Upon hearing my teasing tone of voice, Quincy hung up without saying anything else. I originally thought that Quincy wouldn't give up easily, but after that night, he never came back to bother me again. Finally relieved of him bothering me anymore, my mood improved greatly. My career also skyrocketed as if by magic when it came time for year-end evaluations. And award ceremonies such as Outstanding Employee or Rising Star honors were announced, one after another falling onto my lap along with bonuses worth tens of thousands, my daily work became much easier too. After New Year's Day passed by smoothly, I was even recommended by someone higher up in management within our company headquarters cultural training program where we practice dancing together. Since dance is something familiarly comfortable territory for me, I was paired up with a handsome guy named Joseph who was 2 years older than me. We got along well because we had similar educational backgrounds and interests. However, the amount of physical activity required for practicing this dance routine was quite high. During one particular move in the dance where Joseph had to lift me up by my waist and hold me high in the air while I stretched out my arms to express an image of budding life, something went wrong. At first, everything seemed fine, but when Joseph lifted me up forcefully by my waist, I became overly sensitive all over and felt weak in all four limbs. I even embarrassingly gasped aloud right there on stage. Joseph must have been scared by my reaction too. He lost his focus for a moment, which caused him to accidentally let go of his grip on me, causing us both to fall down hard onto the floor. I landed heavily on my back with a loud thud. Joseph quickly helped pick me back up again, looking very apologetic about what happened. The dance teacher scolded Joseph for a few moments before letting him take me away to rest instead. Joseph nodded silently as he bent down and picked me up from off the ground like how princes carry princesses in fairy tales. Low head bowed down towards his chest while wrapping his arms around his neck tightly. I could hear that his heart rate was beating very fast at that moment, and mine probably wasn't doing much better either. Once we arrived at the resting room area, I leaned against a chair while Joseph crouched beside it, asking softly, "Is there anywhere you feel uncomfortable?" Feeling pitifully helpless, I pointed behind myself, indicating that it's probably due to landing so hard earlier that made my back hurt now. Joseph blushed slightly as he asked for permission. "Shall I help you undo your clothes so we can check?" Nodding quietly, I turned around and lay down on the chair. The style of my training suit is somewhat similar to the classical waistcoat in Europe. Although it highlights my figure, I need someone's help to put it on. When I wear this outfit, my dance teacher tightens the back strap for me. Joseph helped me untie the strap and then opened up the suit. Suddenly, a burning pain shot through my back. Joseph looked pained and apologetic as he took a photo of the bruise on my snow-white skin that was shocking to see. He asked if I wanted to go to the hospital, but I shook my head, indicating that there was no need. "It's just a minor injury," I said with a smile. "If we go to the hospital, Teacher Jed will scold us again." Grateful for not having to go out in public after such an incident, Joseph found some dance oil and offered, "Shall I apply some medicine and massage your back?" I nodded as Joseph rubbed oil onto my back. The oil felt cool at first, but gradually became hotter due to friction from his hands, which had an effect of promoting blood circulation and removing stasis. However, not only did the wound become hotter, but so did other parts of my body, until finally, unable to control myself any longer, two cries escaped from me. As soon as they heard them, both our faces turned red with embarrassment. Even I couldn't believe that such coquettish sounds came out of me. Scratching his head awkwardly while putting away everything neatly afterwards, Joseph helped me sit up before gathering courage enough to ask, "Marcia, when you're better, would you like me to take you out for a movie?" 3 days later, in late afternoon, we went together. Before leaving home, once again carefully dressed myself up. I changed into relatively close-fitting mid-length skirt full of curves beauty and wore pantyhose directly instead of underwear, acting also as a safety pants. When we arrived at the cinema, I looked at the movie ticket and couldn't help but feel my heart tighten. It was the horror film that I feared most. I followed Joseph subconsciously, wanting to escape. There weren't many people watching movies today, and the ticket inspector stared at me with his eyes wide open as he reached out his hand for my ticket. Helplessly handing over my ticket, Joseph and I walked into the cinema side by side. The cinema was pitch black. As soon as the movie started playing, I held on to Joseph's hand, trembling in fear. However, in front of terror, all pretenses were just bubbles. When scary scenes appeared on screen, I buried my head in Joseph's chest, shivering with fright. Joseph was laughing as he hugged me and patted my back to comfort me while I trembled. Listening to his calm heartbeat, I began to feel a little better. I leaned against Joseph's chest, feeling his hand around my waist before it started moving downwards. After a moment, his hand moved up to my light again. Even though there were stockings between us, I could still feel the warmth of his hand, and how nervous he was sweating. I wanted to push him away, but my left hand was pinned behind my back by Joseph, while his right hand held onto my wrist tightly. I realized that our strengths were vastly different. He didn't even use much force yet. I couldn't break free from him. Helplessly, I let Joseph's left hand slip into my skirt. Despite both of us being dancers, Joseph had strong muscles while the skin on my legs was soft. He pinched me a few times before using his fingers to hook and pull at something. In the noisy cinema environment, there was a faint sound of tearing as this guy used only two fingers to rip apart the stockings. The sound reminded me involuntarily of that shameful night when Quincy tore off my clothes. In the same way, my body felt both cold and hot at once, so I pushed away from Joseph's hands and ran out of the cinema with all speed possible. He chased after me, apologizing repeatedly, but all I said in response was, "I hate you," before hiding in the women's restroom. Behind closed stall doors that night, sitting on top of a toilet seat wiping tears away. Took some time for me to calm down completely. Thinking about the boy waiting outside made me feel somewhat embarrassed, since none of this situation could be blamed on Joseph, not even for touching or grabbing. After all, it was myself who had crawled into someone else's arms right from start. Taking deep breaths, then fixing hair and clothing in front of the mirror, I walked out of the restroom. Walking down an empty hallway, I tentatively called Joseph's name a few times. The echoes were all that answered me back. I called his name again with more urgency, but still no response. It almost made me cry. Is Joseph angry and left? I ran towards the end of the corridor, calling out Joseph's name with a choked voice. Suddenly, a pair of big hands reached out from around the corner and lifted me off the ground. With strong arms, my feet dangled in midair as Joseph pinned me against the wall in the dimly lit corner. I looked at him timidly as he lowered his head and kissed my eyes in tears. I instinctively hugged him tightly, afraid that he would disappear again. Then came a passionate kiss. Joseph held my cheeks and kissed my earlobes, lips, forehead, making me feel immersed in love. We hid in an empty corner of the corridor where Joseph lifted up my skirt and we became one. Although it was painful due to lack of time for preparation, tears of happiness flowed down my cheeks. In that moment, I forgot everything from before and was immersed in my own happiness. For the next 2 months, we trained together during daytime and stayed together at night. In our hotel room. According to our dance teacher, Joseph's family is very wealthy with assets worth billions. To please him, I used all means necessary, elegant during daytime while pure beauty at night, until he fell deeply in love with me. During our official performance as lovers on stage filled with intense emotions throughout every glance or movement we made, we won first prize. Afterwards, there was a week-long break where Joseph officially proposed, taking me home to meet his parents. If they approved, then our marriage could be set soon after. Overjoyed by this news, I followed him over 500 kilometers to meet them, but upon arrival, found out that Joseph's father was actually boss at our company headquarters, whom I had met before. Joseph's mother introduced us. "Timothy, this is your son's chosen bride-to-be." We both smiled awkwardly yet politely, but for different reasons. I was embarrassed to have met Joseph in such a way, while Timothy's smile hid his unfriendly gaze towards me. Sure enough, the next day when I returned to work, I received a call from Joseph's father. On the phone, Joseph's father's tone changed from friendly to stern as he said in a harsh voice, "Are you crazy? How dare you seduce my son?" I weakly replied, "Uncle, I really didn't know he was your son, and we truly love each other. Don't give me that useless talk." Joseph's father impatiently interrupted, "You're cunning and shameless. Don't think I'm foolish and don't know about your past absurdities." My whole body suddenly turned cold. All the blood rushed to my face, making it burn with heat. I stuttered a few words but couldn't form a coherent sentence. Maybe Joseph's father's voice remained on the line, coldly saying, "I know you want to become an employee of our company, but let me tell you the truth without my consent. You won't get this position." I cried and wiped away tears, feeling extremely wronged. Then Joseph's father softened his tone slightly over the phone. Marcia, here's what we'll do. I'll give you 1 month to leave Joseph. As compensation for breaking up with him, I promise that you will be able to smoothly transition into permanent employment so that you won't have any worries for life. But if you still have any delusions, his voice became icy again. If you continue clinging on to Joseph like this, then regret will follow for life. After speaking these words out loud, Joseph's father hung up. After receiving this call, I cried all night long and decided to break up with Joseph. At first, I didn't answer his calls or make contact with him at all. Soon after, though, Joseph came looking for me, humbly apologizing and trying hard to cheer me up. Although this poor boy did not even realize what he had done wrong himself, yet he kept apologizing nonstop. I was moved yet scared and hugged Joseph while crying. Joseph moved in with me, and we started living together every day, as if we were already married. 1 month passed quickly, but instead of breaking up, our relationship grew even deeper. After this month had passed, I was always on edge and afraid that Timothy would suddenly appear in a fit of rage. However, Joseph's father did not come to disturb our sweet life. My heart secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that either Joseph had convinced his father or Timothy was just trying to scare me. More than half a month went by like this. On this afternoon at 4:30, the department supervisor handed me a document. Marcia, this is the promotional plan for the beauty advertising company. You need to deliver it to them. This is their address. This is an urgent matter, so you should go now. And when you're done, you can go straight home. I looked at the tightly wrapped document package, nodded my head, and took my bag out. The delivery address for the documents was located in an office building. I arrived at the designated address where a female receptionist politely greeted me. She then told me Lisa's office was on the second floor. By now, it was already 5:30 in the evening. The first floor was empty except for one janitor cleaning up. 2 floors up, no one could be seen. The door marked General Manager's office hung closed. I knocked on it and heard someone say, "Come in." I pushed open the door and walked inside. On the sofa sat a burly black man, over 1.9 meters tall with dark skin and muscles like a bear. He gave me an odd look that made my skin crawl. A woman in her 30s named Lisa sat at the desk and claimed to be from a beauty company. I nervously spoke a few words before handing her the documents. To prevent any tricks, I even had Lisa sign for receipt of them. As soon as work was done, I couldn't wait to leave because those 2 men's eyes were too scary. However, when I turned around to walk out the door, I found that the smart lock had closed. Without me realizing it, the black man walked over and grabbed my arm. He puckered his thick lips and kissed me on the face. I screamed in terror, but then felt something bite my neck like ants crawling on it. Lisa held a needle with tubing and syringe attached behind it against my neck while slowly injecting medicine into my body. My whole body went cold as if shivering uncontrollably, but then quickly heated up again. The burly black man grinned mischievously as he lifted me onto the desk where he began his performance while Lisa took pictures and videos nonstop beside us. Feeling hopeless, at first I remained conscious, but eventually started laughing foolishly, or moaning coquettishly without any strength left in my body while shamelessly catering to him despite myself. The first shoot lasted until after 9 o'clock at night when Lisa played back what she recorded on projection screens showing images of me entangled with that black giant while wearing snow-white skin which contrasted sharply against his cold black complexion, creating an intense visual impact. Still under drug influence, sitting dazed on sofa watching screen, drooling uncontrollably from mouth corner down cheek. Lisa seriously instructed Joseph, who was resting before preparing for second round of shooting. I lowered my head and curled up in the corner, tears streaming down my face. Lisa combed a bun on me for practicing dance moves, then touched up my makeup. She said slowly, "You know better than anyone why we're doing this to you. Don't be delusional about things that don't belong to you, or else you'll die an ugly death. Come on, let's shoot the second round well and make him give up completely." As she spoke, Lisa threw a set of clothes onto the ground, which was the gymnastics Uniform Joseph and I wore together. My spirit collapsed as my whole body trembled uncontrollably. Afraid now? Lisa asked coldly. If you were smart enough, you'd leave now. Before Lisa could finish her sentence, I suddenly lifted my head and slammed it into the wall. Next to me with a loud bang, causing everything in sight to turn blood red before collapsing. Weakly, before falling into darkness, I saw blood splattered all over the wall like a blooming flower. I woke up from a coma not knowing how long had passed. The beeping sound of the life monitor continued as I weakly looked around. I was lying in a hospital bed with Joseph sitting beside me, tears in his eyes as he watched me. I noticed that there was gauze wrapped around my head, and through the gaps I saw that my long hair, which I had kept for over 10 years, had been shaved off. I felt Joseph tightly holding my hand as tears streamed down his face. I opened my mouth and asked in a feeble voice, "Why didn't you let me die?" "It's those bastards who should die," Joseph said softly. "Marcia, forget about all of that. Let's live our lives together from now on." After streaming down my face, I nodded in agreement. That day when I hit my head against the wall and blood flowed like a fountain on the ground. Lisa may have been bold and reckless, but seeing things were getting out of hand, she panicked. 2. She called an ambulance while covering up the wound on top of my head before helping me. Put on clothes and cleaning up myself. However, within 10 minutes an ambulance arrived before Lisa could erase any evidence. There was severe tearing between my legs, but after sending me to the hospital, Lisa disappeared. The doctor found something amiss, so they chose to report it to the police. The police acted quickly and soon figured out what happened, even though it wasn't complicated at all. Quincy, Lisa, along with that black man, were thrown into jail. It took quite some money for our company to suppress this matter so we wouldn't get exposed by media scrutiny. As for myself, after paying with innocence, dignity, love, and even life itself, finally got this job offer, which allowed us to live without worries under foreign capital enterprises. But strangely enough, instead of focusing on this matter, I was immersed in my love with Joseph. Although Joseph's parents strongly opposed our marriage, Joseph still chose to marry me. Even if there were no relatives or friends present, he didn't care at all. 2 years later, I gave birth to a pair of twins. Joseph's parents finally put down their pride and often came to visit us. They even said that they officially recognized me as their daughter-in-law. But I didn't care about these empty titles. After experiencing life and death, in the future of my life, I only live for myself and my loved ones. Well, the story has come to an end. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We have more videos available. Please visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel.